Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon? That's like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me. You know the drill by now. I'm obsessed with running, and that's why I have this podcast. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick, aka Warwick Runs on different platforms. I'm currently in Boston, or just outside Boston. We're here for vacation, and we're coming up on the last days, and it's been really good. I've been running a bit less, and that has also been the intention. Like I said in one of the last episodes, I'm doing a 3+1 cyclist where I have 3 weeks of more running, more mileage, and then I'm just taking it a bit easier for a week. That doesn't mean that I'm not running at all, but I'm running less. I ended up running actually less this week just because, or also because yesterday I tried to go out for a run. I had to turn around after 200 meters because my body was just exhausted. And my resting heart rate during the night was higher, so it was not like a huge surprise. But I think it's a great example of how when your body feels super off, you should listen to it and I don't know, take a rest day, do something else. For me, it's usually a rest day. And that feeling kind of lasted throughout the day yesterday. So pretty early on yesterday, decided that today, so the day after, is also going to be a rest day just to make sure that I'm recovered going into a new week where I'm hopefully again back at like the 100K plus mileage. Another thing that has been really interesting to see and experience here is how the heat and humidity have affected my running and my effort and my performance. I guess I've, trained in the heat before, but it feels a little bit different here. It feels different now than it has been before. I spent a lot of time on the bike, and there it definitely is different because it's easier to get water and liquids during the ride, but also you have higher speed, which again leads to more wind and cooling. So that is a difference and something that I'm honestly kind of struggling with right now to deal with, but also just makes me more aware of how much it affects my performance. Because although I'm running pretty easy at the paces that I wasn't able to run easy at before, it still just exhausts me to run in this heat. So it's a different kind of exhaustion. Anyways, today we are lucky enough to have a runner on that actually reached out to me a few weeks ago and just said that she loved the podcast. And then I looked her up on Instagram and realized that she was a very good runner herself. And I was like, I need to have Cindy on the podcast. And we had a great chat. The funny thing is that this was like 2 or 3 days before her own wedding, and she is now currently on her honeymoon, which is, the fact that she just found time before or in the middle of her preparations for the wedding to join the Marathon Podcast. I think it's amazing. It was a very fun chat that we had, and I think that some of the things that she's talking about it's fun to hear her journey through running, like how she got into running, but also the things that she's done. She did Tokyo Marathon this year, and what I think is really fun about that is that there are not a lot of people who can say that they did that. I'm really excited for you guys to hear how she actually got there, and also her Boston Marathon journey, or like journey to Boston Marathon. I think that is a fun one. So I'm gonna let Cindy present herself more after, or like in this episode. I wanted to say her last name, but then I realized that she might have changed it because she just got married. So I'm gonna let her present herself. But have fun listening to this conversation with Cindy. I think that you will learn some and definitely be left inspired. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast, Cindy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here. I think that you're probably the first guest that is on that kind of like reached out and just told me that you love the podcast. And I really, really appreciate that. It's like I told you before we started here. It means a lot when you're in the beginning of a podcast like that to get feedback like that, because the listeners, they seem so far away and you don't really hear from them. So yeah, really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And I am kind of far away, but also kind of like I said, I just love also making those comments to make people aware of the good that they're doing out there. And I know when I receive great comments like that, it kind of inspires me to keep going. So why not pay that forward?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that's a great way of of thinking and of encouraging other people. So yeah, no, really appreciate that. Yeah, you said that you're far away. Obviously, I'm still in Norway, and you're in the US. Where is it that you're based?
I'm in Michigan. I'm in the Metro Detroit area.
Yeah. So I guess like you're the second one from that area on. I guess you know Chris Sadler.
Yes, yeah, that's right. We're both Fleet Feet ambassadors too, so I know him pretty well. He's a great guy. Very fast.
Yeah, very fast. No, cool. Before we start talking about the running, you have a pretty big week coming up, or big weekend. Tell me about what is it that is happening in your life this week?
I do. I am getting married in just 3 days, so June 28th is my big wedding day. I can't believe it's already so close.
How does it feel?
It feels very surreal. I actually have some blocks and I change the blocks every day. When we first got engaged, it was like 500 days or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't very diligent about changing those blocks, but now that it's so close, I'm changing those blocks every day. And I actually stood up in a wedding last weekend and seeing my friend walk down the aisle, that's when it really hit me. I'm about to be doing that exact same thing next weekend. So it's definitely feeling real, but I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. Have you, like, since you were a kid, kind of had a dream of what your wedding day would look like, or what kind of girl are you in that way?
Yeah, definitely. As a girl, I've always dreamed of my day and having a nice dress and all the flowers and the dancing and all that. And there's a lot that goes behind it and a lot of work to build up to this one day, but I know it's gonna be great no matter what, and even if something goes wrong, I have been told that there will be one thing that goes wrong, that I'm just gonna have a good positive mindset and stay calm and know that the whole point of this is to marry my best friend, and that's the whole reason why
Yeah.
we're having this day. Not to, you know, throw this huge party or anything, but
Yeah.
also, start the next chapter of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. When this episode is out, you are hopefully already married. So congrats. Uh, but so for me personally, when I have big things like that coming up, I sometimes tend to like not prioritize the other things in my life as much because I get so caught up in that. And I know that you are obviously the reason why you're here is because you are a passionate and a pretty good runner. How has it been to be able to combine like planning a wedding and having a job and running? How has that been for the last few months?
It's definitely been hard at times. Balancing life in general with running is definitely hard at times. And then you throw in planning this big wedding here, that's another wrinkle in it. But I think having a good support system helps immensely. My mom has done so much to help with this wedding that every time I just talk to her, she's like, "Oh, yep, already done that, got that." She has made like so many little surprises for our wedding, and just having her support has been a massive help. So shout out to my mom for that for sure. And then just another thing too is if I completely cut out running or completely cut out work or anything like that, I feel like I would just feel off too. Running typically adds to my life and it is my outlet. And I love starting my day with any form of movement, even if it's just a little walk around my block or something like that. But I feel like if I didn't have running, I would feel even worse than if I did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And that like when you say that, it makes me curious because sometimes I like whether I listen to podcasts or I see people talking about running, like honestly, if they're doesn't really matter if they're professionals or if they're just running for mental health reasons or like just to feel good about themselves. Uh, Sometimes I'm having or I've had difficulties understanding that people are actually excited to just get out. Like
Yeah.
lately I've honestly felt more like okay, now I understand it. It's more fun to get out, especially when you're in that routine of doing that every day. How is that for you? Do you feel like every run now is something that you're looking forward to, or is it sometimes that you feel like, oh, today it's super hard to get out there and I would rather do something else?
Luckily, because the weather has been a bit nice too, it is really warm here. It has been high
Hmm.
80s, 90s lately, so that has
Yeah.
been a little bit difficult, but, honestly, I just think back to my Tokyo Marathon build, and I refuse to complain about the heat right now because that was very hard to get out there when it was dark and super cold and
Hmm. Hmm.
snowy, and I couldn't feel my hands, but I'm so thankful that it's bright now in the morning that it does get me excited to get out the door, and because when I get married, I'll be moving in with my fiancé too this weekend. I'm just cherishing the last few moments in this neighborhood that I'm in. So
Hmm.
every day when I do get out the door, I'm looking around and I'm just trying to take in the sights again and take in all the houses and just look at everything too and just kind of remind myself that this is maybe one of the last times I'll be running down the street around here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty special. And I think that it was Chris Sadler who actually said uh at the end of the episode that I had with him where he was talking about how like you get to go out
Yeah,
for a run. And I just love that perspective of that, and I thought about it quite a lot, you know, like how lucky we are to actually just get out there or to be able
definitely.
to.
Yeah. I mean, not gonna lie, when that 5 a.m. alarm goes off, a lot of times I am questioning why do I do this? You know, I could just not, but if I didn't do it, I know I would just not feel good the rest of the day too. And those days where you just kind of break in your consistency can just really projectile the whole rest of your training too. So even if it's just for a little bit, if you want to just cut your run short a little bit if you're not feeling that, but just the fact that you keep staying consistent and getting out there and showing up for yourself too is
Mhm.
makes immense progress. And just thinking about the fact that we do get to do this because I have struggled with injury in the past and I remember just waking up those days and I'd still wake up early just because my body's used to it at that point, and I would just stare outside, I'd eat my breakfast and just think like, "Wow, I really miss that morning run right now."
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like when you're injured, like honestly, like even if you have a cold, you just start
Yeah,
appreciating so much, like not having a cold or not being injured. And then I look at people running, and oh, they're so lucky who like they're able to actually run. And then I kind of I forget about it when I start running myself again. Then I kind of it's a given, right? Like I take it for granted that I'm able to just go out there and do mile after mile after mile, and it's something that we never should take for granted, I think.
definitely. I even when I get a cold, like you were saying, I'm like, "Wow, I miss being able to just breathe normally."
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Hey, we've talked for a few minutes already, and people are probably wondering who Cindy is. Why don't you present yourself? Like, who is Cindy, and uh, who are you outside of running?
Yeah, so I'm Cindy. I'm also Ginger Gone Running on Instagram. That's kind of where I post a lot of running content here or there. I'm not a full-time influencer by any means. I do have a job. I'm a CPA, so I'm a certified public accountant. So we've been known to work a lot too. So balancing that job and also running is sometimes a little tricky, especially during my busy season, which is typically around the January to end of April timeframe. But I am an auditor, so I travel a little bit for work too. So balancing that is always a little fun. And that's kind of the gist of me. I started running a little later on in life. And probably about 2019, I think I did just a random turkey trot 5K, and fell in love with it at that point. I didn't do cross country in college or high school or anything like that. I actually did cheerleading in middle
Hmm.
school and high school, and actually tore 4 ligaments in my knee my senior year of high school, and had to have major surgery that year. So I tore my ACL, my MCL, my medial and lateral meniscus. So I was out that senior year. But I ever since then, I had physical therapy, and I remember telling my physical therapist, I just would love to run a 5K someday. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we can get you there." So I
Hmm.
remember running for 10 minutes on the treadmill and just being like, "Oh my god, I just ran for 10 whole minutes on a treadmill. That's crazy." And I just kind of worked my way up there to now 4 marathons later.
Wow. So you know everything about not taking running for granted.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how old were you in 2019 when you started?
I think maybe 25, I think. I've been running for
Hmm.
about 5 years. So I'm 28 now. I just turned 28 a couple months ago. So I maybe was like 23-ish then.
Yeah. And you were saying four marathons later. Why don't you, since we're on the marathon podcast,
Mhm.
what has your marathon journey been like? Like, how did you kind of get the idea that, oh, I'm gonna do a marathon, and how has that progress been?
So I definitely never thought I would be able to run a marathon because that first 5K I did, I was all out sprinting to get that 33-minute mark. So we all start somewhere. My first 5K was definitely 33 minutes. But after that 5K, I was like, I want to do the 10K next because naturally I just look for the next big thing to do. I'm not satisfied. I want to do more. So I started just running more consistently. And in a couple months, I ran a 10K. And then after that, I was like, all right, I want to do the half marathon now. So I started training for that. And actually, this was around COVID too. I got deferred from starting my job. So I had this whole summer off. And I kind of used that summer off to just fall in love with running and build a consistent running routine, and was able to do a virtual half marathon. My parents got out and they held up a little finish line for me and everything. And I remember my fiance even paced me for the last few bit of the miles. And it was funny too because they held the finish line at a certain point where I started, and as soon as my watch hit 13.1, I was like, "Nope, I'm done," and I didn't even cross the finish line.
Oh, wow.
But it I kind of got the spark in my head from my dad too. He actually ran a marathon when we were pretty little. I think he was 40 years old when he did his first marathon, and I remember him telling me about it, and I thought, why would anybody run for 4 hours? That's insane. Um,
Mhm.
but I got the thought in my head once I finished that half, and I signed up for the next thing and ended up actually getting really bad shin splints after doing that half marathon. So that ended me having to defer the first marathon entry that I did sign up for. And because of that, I went into physical therapy, and those physical therapists helped me so much with my shin splints that when I did end up actually running my first half marathon the next year, which I believe would be 2021 then, I came back to those physical therapists and I showed them my medal and I was crying. I was just so happy to
Yeah.
have finished the distance there. So I remember my first marathon was 4 hours and 36 minutes, and I was
That,
so
yeah.
excited, just so elated. So
It must be so much fun though, like looking back then at your 5K being 33, and then you like get to the marathon distance and you're running. Like, yeah, that is. I think that is something that, at least for me, I appreciate so much about the marathon distance, that what seems impossible today is so realistic, like tomorrow, or obviously not tomorrow, but in the future. And I just love hearing how you then, like went from celebrating those 10 minutes on the treadmill to doing a marathon, and doing a marathon, like running your first marathon, 4:33, is that what I said? Or 4:30?
Yeah, 4:36.
For 36, yeah.
Yep.
It's still like much faster than most people will ever do their first marathon. I think that it just proves that when you fall in love with something and you do it the right way, and like you said, with like getting help with your injuries. And I'm very curious. I want to talk more about that later, like what it was that you actually felt like helped you so much that you were able to get rid of the shin splints and get back to running. But I know that today you have a much faster PB or PR for on a marathon. So what has the journey been like since that first marathon, like when you did 4:36?
It has been crazy. I never thought that I would be able to run as fast as I can now. After I ran 4:36, I remember looking at the Boston Marathon qualifying times and seeing that I would need to run a 3:30 at the time, and I was like, I remember looking on Instagram and seeing people who did post their first marathon time and their more recent one, and I just kept looking and looking and trying to find people who did actually drop down an hour. And I saw a
Hmm.
couple people and I'm like, okay, it's possible. So I got that idea in my head and I just ran with it literally. So I signed up for my next one. I was like, all right, what's my next one? I want to be a Boston marathoner. So I just started working towards that goal. Kind of found out about Bayshore 2 and the half marathon, and I was like, I bet I could run the half marathon a little faster now too. So I signed up for that, and I just really just didn't want to stop seeing what I was capable of once I ran that first marathon.
Yeah. No, I love that you say that, because I think a lot of people can relate to, you know, Googling or going into YouTube or Instagram and see people who are like, oh, what was their time 2 years ago or a year ago? And I think that's where like Eric Floberg has been so good at showing, like it's been so specific on his videos. And uh uh, especially for him, because he was like working so hard to get that sub 3 marathon, and now he's like a 2:32 marathoner. And I think that is uh like you said, or maybe almost like a bit underrated, how important it is to show that progress. From one thing is like running fast, that is like, cool and it's fun and inspiring, but when you see where people were before, then it feels more attainable, I guess, like more realistic for you to do. And do you remember like what kind of people, do you remember the people you were looking at and using as inspiration for that 1 hour improvement from 4:30 to 3:30?
I can't remember exactly. I just remember literally Googling and looking for podcasts and everything. And I think that's
Hmm.
one of my favorite parts about podcasts and social media is seeing those encouraging posts like that. Because if I didn't see that, or if I saw, oh, only Boston marathoners come from people who have been running for years and years and all this stuff, but I that's why I love sharing my story too, because I am just a normal everyday person who just kind of randomly picked up running and never gave up hope on themselves. And I hope that I can also encourage others to keep pushing and knowing that they can do it too. So just I think just getting the thought in your head helps so much, and I want to put that thought into people's head too.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and I think that is like maybe the main purpose of, or the goal with this podcast too, is for people to see that. And that's why I think it's so important to not just have the best ones on, because obviously the like runners like Jess McLean, Rory Linkletter, they're a huge inspiration, and it's really cool and fun to see how they're working towards their goals and how they got to where they are. But for like say for you, when you were looking for someone to be inspired by, when you had a 4:36 marathon behind you, I guess like then Rory would not have been that person. You would need someone who was like, okay, I need to see someone who did around 4:30 and who did the Boston Marathon qualifying time. um but just to get this timeline here, so when was it, like what year and month was it that you did your first marathon?
Believe it was 2021 October. I did the Detroit Free Press Marathon. That was my first. And
Mm-hmm.
then I did a half marathon. I signed up for, what was the next one? It was Erie Marathon. That's in September because my fiance and I were planning to go to Oktoberfest. So I was like, I got to get another marathon in before we go. So that just fell at a good time. And I saw that it was a flat, fast course. So I signed up for that. And I cut almost an hour off my time in that 1 year. I ran, I think, a 3:47 that day, and it was very humid. It was like a 80 or 90, no, it was like 75, high 70s out and 90% humidity that day. So that was the first marathon my mom ever watched me run too, and she was very concerned.
Yeah.
I ended up finishing fine, but there were a lot of people around me who were very dehydrated and really messed up. But after that, I did the Indy Marathon because once I got to 3:47, I was like, okay, this Boston Marathon goal is within reach,
Yeah,
and
because
I'm going. Oh, go ahead.
how did that feel? I'm curious, like, because you like 3:47, then you're starting to run pretty fast. Like, what went through your head after finishing that? Was that something you expected, or was that like a little bit, oh wow?
It was definitely a surprise, because I can't remember what I ran at Bayshore that year, but I knew I would be capable of running maybe a 350-ish or low fours. I knew I could break 4 after what I ran in Bayshore. So I was like, okay, like just get some good training in. I just bought like some training program online and followed that and just really consistently applied myself. I think too for my first marathon, I was just so scared of getting injured that I only did easy runs. I did no speed workout, nothing. So my base was pretty low. I know my peak week I maxed at 40 miles, and that was 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just so scared of getting injured. I really just wanted to finish my first marathon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that opened up a lot of possibility for my next one when I did start adding in speed work, increasing my miles just a little bit. But I was still really scared of injury, but it was incredible. I just knew I was so close, and especially after already cutting an hour off, I was like, I could potentially do this.
Yeah. And then you went to Indy, is that what you said?
Yep, yep. So
And
um,
how long was it in between those two?
So Erie was September and then Indy was in November. So I had just over a year and I
Yeah.
ran a
Okay, so it was a year.
3:14 in Indy. And I did
Wow.
not, I was honestly, I was more shocked at my 3:14 in Indy than I was at the Erie Marathon. I
Yeah.
did not think that I was capable of running that fast that day.
No, like that must have been amazing.
Yeah, still holding on to that.
Yeah. But like, so I guess then you obviously know now I'm qualified for Boston. You know that uh you know that you're kind of up there, because I would say like as a girl running 3:14, that is super fast. Um
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember, like, looking at people's Instagram and seeing, like, I just ran Tokyo too, and I ran 3:12 there, just after 12-ish weeks of training after Indy too, not to
mhm.
mention just tapering and all that, so maybe it was about a 10 weeks of training, so I was able to cut another couple minutes off of that, And I just remember looking at people's Instagram and seeing 3:12 or 3:14 and thinking, wow, they're so fast. And I really just have imposter syndrome over it. Like, I still think of myself as that 4:36 marathoner. I still
Mm-hmm.
have that poster and I'm still so proud of that. And I don't ever want to lose sight of my accomplishments back then too. And I think sometimes Strava and social media can really take away those little victories that you have too. Because when I was
Yeah.
training for that first marathon, I had no Strava or anything, so I wasn't comparing myself to anyone. And I think that's what made it just that much more special too.
Yeah, I think that is something that's super interesting that I thought a lot about myself because when I first got into marathons and did my first marathon, and it was a 2:52 marathon. I was super happy, like obviously stoked, and a lot of people around me were like, "Oh, that's so fast and that's so good." And then I also started kind of, you know, getting into the running scene on social media, and then you start seeing all these people running pretty fast, and then your time doesn't feel that fast anymore. I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's kind of like, yes, my time is fast. I understand that, but then it's like, well, I also now follow hundreds of people on Instagram, and all of them are faster than me. And it's funny what you said about it, the imposter syndrome, because as a creative, like me being a filmmaker and photographer, there's a lot of imposter syndrome in our field, right? Like, because we are kind of working with our passion, with our hobby, but you still can't measure it. So then the imposter syndrome is so much bigger. But it's funny that you said that about like still feeling like a 3:47 marathon or whatever, because I remember after my first marathon, it was a like fairly small one. I was like, what if they measured the course wrong? Like maybe I wasn't
Hmm.
that fast and something
Yeah.
was wrong. And it wasn't until Boston this year where I was like, well, now I know for sure that I am at that level. But you wouldn't think that the imposter syndrome could be there in a sport like running, where everything is so much about numbers and measurements. Like it's very black and white. Like I don't know, maybe not black and white, but it's very clear if you did well or not, right? Like there's a number on that paper or
Yep.
on the results, and you can see that. So yeah, but running them like the Tokyo, then was it 10 weeks between you said? So like fairly back to back.
Yeah.
How was that? Like because that means that you went from, like you said, you were worried about getting injured, so you were keeping your mileage down, no speed work, running easy, to then just doing 2 marathons in 10 weeks. Your mentality on this must have changed quite a lot in
Yeah.
that time.
Um, I was very nervous about that. I like I said, I have only done one marathon a year for that reason too, because I'm always nervous about getting injured and overdoing it. But once I found out that I actually got into the Tokyo Marathon, I got in through the lottery. I threw my name in as kind of a joke. I'm like, I'm not going to get into this. There's no way. And with it being my busy season too, I was like, I could never run the Tokyo Marathon. I could never
Yeah.
travel to Japan and takes time off work and do this. But my fiance and I were on vacation when they released the results. And I remember asking him the day before, I was like, where do you think you'd want to go next in life, like for vacationing? What's your bucket list item? And he said, Japan would be really cool. And I just remember thinking, I don't know about that. Like, I don't think we'll be ever able to go to Japan. But lo and behold, I checked my email the next day, and I remember seeing selected and Googling, does this mean something else in Japanese? Is this in English? Like, I couldn't believe it. So I was nervous about the quick turnaround, but I knew that I had to at least give it a try. And with the right coaching and everything too, we were able to do that.
Yeah. I love that you just did that. And honestly, I also think that I'm not saying that it's healthy to run marathons back to back, but there are I'm not sure if it's as hard, especially now with the new shoes and stuff. That is
Yeah.
like I think it's much more realistic. Obviously depends on your background, all of the mileage that you've been able to have. But if you are a runner who is like running fairly frequently, like almost every day, then I think that it's much more realistic than, especially more realistic than it used to be if you compare it to how it was before we had the super shoes. Because I just hear the stories of people not being able to even walk for a few days, whilst now people can realistically go out for a run the day after. Not that I don't go out for a run the day after the marathon, but I know that some people do. So I think that has changed a little bit.
Yeah, it was definitely hard to bounce back at first too. It was a hard build in general, probably one of the hardest marathon builds that I've ever done just because of work and travel and the weather and everything like that too. But I'm glad that I was able to take part in that race, and I will never regret doing that run.
No, it sounds amazing. Tokyo is definitely on my bucket list too, which obviously that I'm getting very curious because I've barely looked into how to be a part of Tokyo Marathon. I know that it's hard and it's a bit, that one is a bit different than others. Like with London, you have the ballot and you just like you sign up. But there are several ways of getting into to Tokyo. But if you're not Japanese, then it's even harder. So can you share a little bit about what you did? Like, how did you figure out to how to apply, and how was that process like? Or
Yeah,
what
I
was it
just
like?
I saw the lottery was open. A friend of mine was posting about it. I saw on Instagram, "Oh, Tokyo Lottery's open," and I was like, I'll just throw my name in and see what happens." That's literally it. Everybody has asked me, they're like, "How'd you get in?" And I'm like, I just applied for the lottery and just I guess I'm really lucky. I just got in through that way. But I have heard that if for especially US citizens, if you do try to get in through lottery, it's like less than a 1% chance that you can get in.
Okay. Yeah. So it's
So
kind of like London. And do you know how many spots there are for the lottery?
I have no idea. I think it's like less than 5,000, I believe, because the race actually isn't that big compared to other majors. It's around, I think, like less than 40,000 do it.
Yeah. No, I was reading about it, and it's very commercialized. It seems like, because one of the ways to get in, and don't quote me on this because it could be that I'm wrong, but uh, I think that one of them is that you sign up with like a tour operator, and then included
Um,
in your like ticket with them, you will get a spot at the Tokyo Marathon. So like there's the tour operators actually get some spots for the Tokyo Marathon, and then obviously it's more spots for the Japanese, and then if you run crazy fast, then you might be able to. But it's yeah, for most of us, I think that it's a lottery or paying your way in somehow.
yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Like that the marathons are, in some ways it feels like it's also becoming a sport where if you have the money and the resources, then you're able to run the majors, whilst it's not. But that's kind of what I love about Boston, is that at least if you run fast enough, you're part of it. What do
Yeah.
you think about that? Like the way it's heading in terms of that?
I do like the lottery aspect. I think that's a fun way to kind of add in people, but I think like you said, when they were changing the standards for Boston, I was all for it. And even with changing the new standards now too with the downhill and all that, I am all for it too. I remember I listened to the Doesn't Care podcast and they were just saying run faster, and it really is. You just got to run faster. There's so many people
Hmm.
out there just putting in the work, and I put in the work, and that's how I got there too. It is possible to get faster. You just got to commit yourself to it. So I think having those standards is fun because I know even New York has those standards, and that was my small little goal with Tokyo, was to qualify for New York, which I did, but I don't think I'll actually get in with my time just because I have heard their buffer time is pretty crazy. Um,
Yeah.
but I agree. I like having something to work for, and having a goal like that is awesome.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about just run faster. But I also know that it's a little bit of a controversial thing to say because running should also be for everyone. And so like I haven't really made up my mind on where I'm standing on that. I I love the mentality of just run faster because I also kind of believe that everyone's able to if they just really, really try and work for it. But then there are also, I was having Chris Striegel on the other day, and we were talking about how some people are just more talented, right? Like they have more of like, I'm probably kind of one of them myself, of like 4 months of running, and then I do a sub 3 marathon, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, hey, I've been working for this like for years, and I've been running more than 60 miles a week, and I'm not able to do it. And I'm not sure if I like I as a former athlete and the competitive part of me, I obviously love that you have those time goals because then it's easier to be like, oh, I'm gonna qualify for this race. And I hate that I can't, as a non-UK citizen, I can't kind of apply for the time based lottery in the UK, because I wish that I would just like, oh, if I'm fast enough, I'm good enough, right? But then again, when it's a random lottery, at least everyone's able to get that experience. Because I assume, and I'm very curious to hear more about the Tokyo Marathon, but I can't just assume that that must have been such an amazing experience in itself, regardless of times and like how you did. So how was it?
Yeah, I agree too with the whole lottery aspect. It's awesome to just have that and just be able to throw my name in there too, but I think there's also a bad part of that where there's people who maybe don't have good intentions when they throw their name into the lottery. And like, honestly, when I kind of like how I did with Tokyo, what if I got in and I couldn't show up that day and my firm wouldn't let me do it? Like, that's wasting another spot. That's someone who
Hmm.
really wants to train and put their effort into that. But Tokyo was awesome. I'm so glad that I was able to do it. The logistics of everything was great. For that being my first major too, just being able to wake up in my hotel room and walk down to the start line, and everything was so organized. The only complaint that I would have is just their merch sells out so fast.
Oh, really?
They do not want any waste at all, so they just only make a very, very small, limited amount of quantities. So, with this being my first major and it being Tokyo, I was so excited to get all this merch and stuff. So I had to scour the internet, read through Reddit, and make friends on the internet to hopefully get the right size and figure out if I could get a jacket and shoes and all that. So definitely having good resources helped me to snag a couple of good merch items for that. But it was difficult.
But were you not able to buy them beforehand or anything? Because like with Boston, they will start selling those. I don't know when they started selling them, if it's like October, November or something the year prior to the marathon.
So you could, it had to be
Mhm.
only on the A6 Japan website.
Okay.
They had a date that it was gonna be put up there, so I just remember checking the website over and over, and it's in Japan too, so you don't know what time
Hmm.
of day that's gonna be over here in the US as well.
No.
But it sells out in seconds, and the
Okay.
sizing too, I've heard, can be all over the place. So I had ordered everything kind of a bit of a size bigger than what I normally would do, and
Hmm.
everything ended up being so huge. But I was able to have someone who went the first day of the expo when they actually did have some inventory in stock, and she was able to pick me up a jacket in my size, and she said she had to fight people. People were like ripping at her skin, trying to grab the jackets and
Wow.
everything. And so that's my only complaint. But the race itself was great. It's a quiet course. People don't really scream and cheer. I could hear my fiance cheering too, just because even though there was so many people in the crowd, but I could hear him because they more golf clapped there.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
then they
was it
also,
packed still?
yeah, it was very busy. The first part of the race was so packed. People were jumping over barriers, and it was definitely a little chaotic. The on-course nutrition is definitely interesting too. They don't hand
In
out
what way?
gels. They hand out pancakes and plums, pickled plums, Pocari Sweat too. They handed out Pocari Sweat, which actually was pretty good. You can't carry a bottle either, so with it being a warmer day that day, they actually ran out of water near the end of the marathon for those people who did take a little longer, which was kind of sad. But yeah, they handed out bananas on course, so not your typical gel situation.
But that I'm curious about because Japan, like you said, they don't want any waste and it's very clean. And I actually saw people commenting. These are not people at the Boston Marathon, but like during the Boston Marathon, people were commenting on the fact that we were just throwing our waste from the gels on the course, and then obviously you're it's okay to do so. Like they will clean up after you. How was that in Tokyo?
Yeah, so you cannot do that at Tokyo. You will be disqualified, which I was so scared of. They actually have a lot of volunteers that just hold those Kroger bags, like basically a little plastic bag, and you have to throw it in there. They would just stand at the
Wow.
side. There were a lot of people, but I feel like I may have missed, but I had good intentions of trying to make it in those. So and I just held on to it a lot of times too. So I just kept it in my pockets and tried to make do with that. Thankfully.
Yeah, nice. So what is the course like in like terms of elevation, and is it a loop that you do like once, or what is that like?
It's all around Tokyo. They have a lot of really tight turns that definitely added a lot of mileage to that run. I actually almost ran 27 miles that day.
Wow.
I ran, I think, like 26.8 high, which I was kind of upset about because at the end I was definitely feeling it with the heat and the sun. And the last couple miles, the last 4 miles, oh, and everything's in kilometers too, so that was something
Hmm.
I was not used to. Um, but those last 4 miles, you just go straight for it's a big out and back for the last 4. So you go out to, you turn around, and then you come back to, and you're just seeing people pass you the whole time on the other side, and you're just like, "Where is this turn?" Like, just continuing to go and wonder where the turn is that you can turn around and start heading to the finish.
Hmm.
And even the finish line was very small. As I was running towards it, I couldn't really see it, and I had no idea where the end was too. And it's kind of all on cobblestone. So that was the fun part of the course. But other than that, it's very flat. There's like maybe some very, very small little rolling hills, but great course to potentially PR on. Just the tight turns really slow you down, and they add a lot of mileage, it turns out.
Yeah. I really hope that I'll be able to, first of all, obviously go to Tokyo, but also to run now on. It would be a lot of fun. I think that's kind of now that I've done Boston, I would say that's like the one that I'm the most excited about. Hopefully, running one day. Uh, I also think that it's very fascinating to see. I don't know if you follow Ran to Japan, but yeah, I think it's super interesting to see how he has been able to show us the Japanese running culture, like their way of training, and with that mileage, and how he's obviously taking it very far with this. But uh, the culture for running in Japan is so big, so it would also be cool. I don't know if I would go as far as saying that it feels like the country of running right now, but it definitely feels like one of them. So yeah, and when yeah, like they definitely believe in a lot of mileage. Like they run a lot. And you were saying that you were kind of you were staying at around 40 miles, was it? 40 miles when before you were or when you were worried about getting injured.
Yeah,
What
when
is
I
like
first
what
started.
yeah, so what has that been like like so if you compare it to this last marathon block, what were you up at and how you've been able to build up to Tokyo?
So I have very gradually increased my mileage over the years. Like I remember for Erie, I started maybe starting to get close to 50. I don't even think that I did hit 50 for 1 week for Erie. And then for Indy, that's kind of when I started getting a coach to help me a little bit. And we were in the 55s for a couple of weeks for that. Um, Pretty much like a couple of weeks we were in 55s. And then for because I did so well with that and my body took it so well and I was like, I want to do more because I just felt so good and felt like I could do more. So we started getting up more into the 60s, 65s for Tokyo.
And what did that feel like for you? Like, how did your body respond to that?
Good. It was good.
Yeah.
It was definitely a little harder with it being a quick turnaround and then winter too. It's always I feel like just harder on the body in the winter. Um, but yeah, it felt great. I'm excited to kind of keep building and maybe even potentially get to 70 for the Chicago Marathon this year. And I definitely I love running more and running just makes me so happy. I remember just getting extra miles in, especially in the winter, like, I'm getting all dressed up to get outside, I might as well just put in some good mileage while I'm at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love just spending time outdoors, especially in the summer now with it being so light. I wanna just run all the miles and do all the things, so I just love running, so I'm always more than happy to start adding on more miles within reason.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that as soon as you start hitting those like bigger numbers, then you get more motivated, and you're like, oh, how much can I run? But it's also so interesting because obviously me being in Norway, we use kilometers, so we have different numbers. So 62 miles is 100 kilometers. So for us, it's like, oh, you get to 100 kilometers. That is cool because then it's like a three digits number. Um, do you have that in miles in the US where you're like, oh, you're at that? Like, because obviously you can get to 70 and you can get to 80, but like I feel like 100 is always 100, right? Like 100 something is cooler than whatever number is below 100. But in terms of the miles, like weekly mileage, what do you feel like is the number that people are like, now I'm super proud because I got to this
I feel
mileage?
like it might be 60. I feel like nowadays though, everybody is just running more and more and more, and I think that's great, but sometimes it's not a you have to find a good medium and you have to find a good
Hmm.
balance because not always running more can help you. It can actually hurt you a lot of times, and just because you're running more miles in a week doesn't mean that you're going to get closer to your goal or you are getting better because maybe that's taking away from those speed workout days too. So, like, I was able to run a lot of my races on lower mileage. So I do think it is possible that way. I think you just have to find something that fits your body the best. And I definitely feel like we are seeing a lot of people come out now after running a lot of these higher mileage and saying, that did kind of take a lot out of me and I want to take a step back now and I would rather run a little bit less and still love running at the end of the day than just completely burn myself out too.
I think that is such an important thing to kind of consider and you need to figure out what works for you, right? I don't know if you listened to
Exactly.
the pod or the episode where Jess McLean was on and she was saying that she her sweet spot seemed to be around 72 miles, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And she's one of the best. I mean, she's going to Tokyo now for the World Championships. She's one of the best in the US. And uh, I think that it's such a good example that what works for some people isn't necessarily the same that works for everyone. And personally, I think I had like less than 30 miles a week on average before Boston, and I did 253. Not that 253 is like the fastest you can go, but I still, because of injuries, I wasn't able to keep the mileage up, and I never thought that I would be able to. But I think that if you have a good balance between the harder workouts and the easier runs, and you get a lot of easy running in, and you have a good like foundation from before, I think that that's more important than what you're actually having. But then obviously, like personally, I am a big fan of being able to work out or train a lot, but then do it at low intensity, and then you will build a base that will probably help you in the long run. But it doesn't necessarily mean that running like 100 miles a week before, or like during in a marathon block, doesn't mean that you're going to run much faster that marathon. But if you've been doing 100 miles a week for 3 years, yes, most likely that will give you the results in the long run. And within those 3 years, you probably have PR quite a lot on a distance like the marathon. But again, it's individual preferences and yeah, how your body works really.
Definitely. I think the biggest piece of advice that I tell people is consistency. And if you're doing too much, if you're running too much, if you're running too fast, and you get injured and you don't listen to your body, maybe you get a niggle and you don't take that one day off or cut that one run short, and you don't make it to race day, and maybe you have to take 2 weeks off, that makes a huge difference rather than just taking that one day off. So listening to your body and just finding a good balance, which is a lot easier said than done, because I have a hard time doing that too. So
Yeah, I find it to be super hard, especially on, like for me now, I built up my mileage. I feel like, oh, I really want to keep this up. And then
yeah.
yesterday I had a shoot the whole day. I went out for a very short run with my dog in the morning, and then we had a shoot. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go out and have a harder session this afternoon. And then I realized at the end of the day that, okay, I'm too tired to do this hard workout. So I'm just going to go out to jog a little bit with my dog. But then as I left the house, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to run at all. I'm too tired to do anything. And yesterday, I'm not sure if I even would have been able to. I was so tired and empty. So, but still on those days, you just accept that, okay, today I had a hard day at work, or I had a lot to do. I've been on my feet the whole day. I need to adjust. I need to kind of just let my body rest. And before we started this, like chatting, or before we started the recording, I was asking you what you wanted to talk about. And one of the things you mentioned was like this work life running, like the balance between all of it. And based on what you said, your job isn't always like the easiest either. Like you might get more tired, I guess, and have months or weeks where the load is pretty intense. How do you balance all of it? Know we talked a little bit about it, but do you have any advice for others who are in a similar situation?
I am just a very type A individual. That's why I'm a morning runner. I wake up early and I get it done those days, but I also do like prioritize my sleep. I have to say no to things sometimes too when I am going after an ambitious goal, but I also just listen to my body. So when I am traveling for work, it's sometimes hard for me to get to bed a little early. So I let my coach know and I look at my plan and I make that week a down week. And I just kind of look at my schedule then and kind of try to make it around that.
Nice. Yeah, I think that is like the best advice you can give, honestly. And I guess it kind of goes back to what we just talked about on adjusting like to the things that are happening in your life. And I think I remember it was this Norwegian cross country skier, and he was saying that if he had 2 nights of sleeping less than he wanted to, he would just always cut back on his training. Like he would do less. And I think that that is kind of the opposite mentality of a lot of others, because people will be like, oh, yeah, but it doesn't really matter how much I slept. I still have to get those workouts in. And to be able to just accept and be like, okay, so this week I had 55 miles instead of 62 miles, right? Like, that's okay sometimes. And goes back to what you said about consistency. If it doesn't really matter, as long as on average you have quite a lot of running and you get that consistency. And it would be different if you just all of a sudden dropped it to zero for 3 weeks and then you try to get back to it. Then you don't have the consistency. And yeah, and sometimes that's okay too. Like, there might be reasons why you need to cut it down or cut it back completely. But um, yeah, I love what you're saying there. And I think that obviously you're lucky to be to be a morning person and be able to get the runs in the morning. I personally, I'm up early, but I enjoy my slow mornings. So tomorrow I have, like, I'm meeting a friend and I'm running with him at 7 a.m., and that feels pretty early for me, but I know that I shouldn't complain, because like Jess, she was talking about being out at 4:30 every morning. So that's a different lifestyle.
Yeah. I love it. Like it takes time to get into that routine, but like I said, it's consistency. I'm just a type A person, and it just took time to kind of get where I'm at. But I can't imagine running after work. It's definitely hard for me, especially during busy season, because that would just stress me out even more, knowing if something happens at work or something like that. It's like, oh, how am I supposed to get my run in and all of that too. But if those things do happen, then just being able to say it's okay, it's just a run. We can do it tomorrow.
So when are you typically out in the morning?
Usually 5 a.m., between 5 and 5:30.
Wow, that's impressive. I always thought that it was just like swimmers that started that early because they needed to have so many workouts or trainings a day. But yeah, I'm starting to understand that there are quite a lot of people being out that early, and I'm very impressed. So good for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. You did mention that you struggle with some injuries and that you got some help on your shin splints, and like, I feel like or that's definitely one of the most common issues that runners are facing. What was it for you that changed that and made it possible for you to start running and keep that under control?
It was really just going to physical therapy, realizing that I did have an injury. I took time off. I remember I took like a whole month off of running, and it still was persisting and not getting better. And I just reached out to doctors about it and kind of kept advocating for myself too, because I did want to run. I actually remember my doctor saying, maybe you just weren't meant to be running more distances. Maybe you just aren't meant to do higher mileage. And at the time, I was doing like 25 miles a week. And I just remember crying to him, and he said, well, let's try physical therapy. And I gave physical therapy a try, and I did that for I think almost 4 months with my shin splints. And that ended up being the help that I needed. And I think honestly, too, just time. It just takes your body time to get used to running.
But have you experienced that there are exercises or things that you've done, like, after that or in, like, during that time, that kind of helped you a lot? Because obviously all over social media you see this videos being like, this is how I got rid of my shin splints. And uh, I've personally, I found some of them to be pretty useful, but I don't know what your experience has been with this.
I used a lot of bands, I know. I don't remember, like, the names of them, but it was a lot of, like, single leg dumbbell Russian dumbbell leg lifts like that. Um, just, like, a lot of calf raises, stuff like that too. Strengthening your hips too and making sure those are aligned. That was a big thing, but yeah, those were kind of the any of those exercises I feel like can help, just anything to strengthen that shin bone.
Hmm. And so then I assume that you've kept this going. Like how big part of strength, like of your training is now, like, or how important is strength training to you, or do you do strength training?
Yes, I love strength training. It's hard for me to find a balance between strength training and running too, just because I don't want to get too sore with it. But yeah, I try to strength train at least twice a week for my lower body, but it usually is around once a week. Or I'll do like one leg day, one upper body day, and one full body day. But I think it's just important to make sure that you don't do it all at once too, and you're not going super hard in the gym and super hard into running, and this is your first week ever trying that. You got to kind of work your way up into that. But I absolutely love strength training.
So do you double then your trainings on the days that you have that? Because I mean, if you're up at almost 60 miles per week, then and you're working or you're running in the mornings usually, how do you find time to also do get your strength training in?
Some days it's easier than not. I usually prioritize running depending on the season I'm in, but I like to run in the mornings. But it's just kinda seeing if I have time for it. Maybe it's only 30 minutes and it's just a video workout at home, then I'll just do that, but a lot of times I do like to try to go to a workout class, but really it's just looking ahead at my schedule and seeing what I have time for. But other than that, I like I said, if I miss a strength day, I don't get all bent up about it.
No, no, good. I'm currently on a 2 week streak of running and no strength training, which is like not at all what I like to do. I've realized how important that strength training is, and then it's just felt so good running lately that I've prioritized that completely. So I
Yeah.
really need to get back to my strength training. But I see what you mean of like. Or I think most of us we do want to prioritize running because it feels like that is the one thing that will make us better runners, but in terms of the sustainability of it, I guess the strength training is key. So yeah,
Yes.
but what about the rest of your training? Like, what does it look like? You were saying that speed work was kind of like not a part of your training back when you were starting out. What does your training look like now?
So sometimes we actually just tried a month of having 2 speed workouts and then an easier long run. So we did kind of some easy runs, probably 6 easy run or 6 days a week of running, 1 day of cross training. I usually like the elliptical. And then I would do Tuesday workout and a Friday workout and then a Saturday easy run, easy long run. And I really loved that. I felt like I saw a lot of gains in fitness doing that, but I was only able to do that just for maybe a month or so. And now I'm just kind of back on to doing, and I will do this too for my marathon training. I'll do a Wednesday speed workout and then I'll throw in a little bit of a speed workout into my long run. I think that's just kind of useful for the marathon distance just to work on fueling at different paces and um, electrolytes and kind of get used to faster speeds during those long runs.
Yeah, because that's kind of the question that I've started asking all my guests because I feel like everyone's kind of, you know, the long run is different from for everyone. It seems like some people just do like a very easy long run, and some people's long runs are like 15 miles, some people's are 20 miles, and so some have even like 30 miles long runs. What is a
Wow.
typical long run for you?
It depends on the season I'm in. So if I am marathon training, I'll build up to the longest I think I've ever done is 22. But I only did that maybe once. But in the marathon, I'll do like a 20 here or there. But for the half, I think the longest I've done is 15 or 16.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Now, this has been very, very interesting. What are your plans going forward? Like you did mention Chicago. Is that your big goal for the fall?
Yeah, that is definitely my goal race this year, I would say. I'm super excited to just kind of take another whack at dropping my marathon PR down and seeing kind of where we can take that and maybe start to kind of inch towards a sub 3 hour marathon. I think that that's kind of like my big goal now in running is to get to that sub 3 hour. I'll have some shorter races sprinkled in here or there, but that's kind of my goal race right now. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm curious to see too. What is your long-term goal? Do you have any like dreams for your own running other than like a sub 3 marathon?
Just sub 3 right now. Doing all 6 of the majors would be awesome. But we'll see if that's possible too. It's a lot to like we were talking about earlier. It's a big expense to travel to these majors and it takes a lot of time off and all that as well, but doing all the 6 majors would be really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. No, that would have been really cool. And now they've added some more to that to those
Yeah.
stars too. So I'm looking at running Sydney next year. So
Oh,
I'm very
okay.
excited about that one. Hey, last question before we end this conversation. How would you say that running has changed your life?
Oh my gosh, it's something that I can't even put into words, but I would be such a different person without running. Just mentally, physically, in so many aspects. I have met friends that are coming to my wedding this Saturday and made the best relationships of my whole entire life. And I've not only made those relationships, but I feel like I've found who I really am too. It's given me the confidence to go out and just talk to people better too. I did used to struggle with depression a little bit, and this has really been a great outlet for me to just start my day off and give me a purpose in life again. And I feel like it's just completely changed everything that I do now. I'm just a happier person, and I spread that happiness to everyone too.
That's such a good answer, and I find it so interesting to hear that. Whenever I ask this question, I feel like everyone's answers are obviously different, but the part like you're saying, like it's improved my quality of life or made me a different person, and whether you have struggled with something like and struggled a lot or just a little bit, people are saying that those issues are now almost non-existent because of running, and I think that is something where we're all very lucky, and that community, I mean, here we are talking to each other because of running. It's pretty unique.
Exactly. Community is like the biggest part of it.
I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Cindy, for guesting the marathon podcast, and can't wait to see what you can do in Chicago this fall.
Thanks so much for having me. This was awesome. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, and good luck with your wedding this weekend. I guess
Thank
that's
you.
much bigger than any marathon.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Have a good one.
Thanks.
That was a good conversation with Cindy. I think that it's so much fun to listen to these stories, hearing how people got into running, hearing how people found running, and also what running means to them. Because, yes, we have the pros, we have the elite, we have people who are running super fast, but I guess like the reason why I love running is that it changes lives. It becomes such a big part of other people's or of people's lives, and it doesn't take that much for you to say that you're a runner, and I love that. And with that, that is it for the episode of or this episode of the Marathon Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you in the next one. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wild Studio.